that was just money down the drain. Really desperate at the time to just get rid of it.
Never co-sign on a loan again.
My third and my final biggest financial mistake.
Especially do not co-sign for strangers.
Hey, my name's Ahmed. I'm 24 years old, and I'm calling it from San Antonio, Texas.
And what do you do for work in San Antonio, Texas, Ahmed?
I'm a test director. I work for the government. Can't really say much about it, but yeah, that's basically the gist of it.
Awesome. And how much you make a year in that position?
In this position, I make $91,000 a year. And then I just do a bunch of other side hustles across my free time.
Nice. So 91,000 base. And how much would you say you make roughly a year from your side hustles?
Maybe depending on the year, it's between 10 and 20. I would say probably closer to 10.
Awesome. What type of side hustles are you doing?
So I coach for soccer. I coach soccer, and I just started doing like acting/modeling. Yeah.
What's the allocation of that $10,000 to $20,000 a year? How much is coming from soccer? How much is coming from acting, modeling?
So I would say for soccer, I would say that's probably around $7,000 a year, about $600 per month. And then you obviously have the off seasons. And then for modeling, I mean, that really depends on, if I get jobs or not, because, that's a little bit more topsy-turvy. The coaching is a little bit more concrete. I know I'm doing that every week. Acting, it's based on who calls me back.
Makes sense. What's your estimate income for acting and modeling this year?
So far, I would say probably around $4,000. I started doing it in March, so I'm going to assume it's probably going to be around like maybe another $7,000 average every year.
Awesome. That's fun to start that and have. I mean, between soccer coach and acting, if you can bring in an extra $14,000 a year, it's a good bit a little pay increase right there. So
yeah,
you already have a great income for your age. So how long have you been working for the government in this current role?
So I got a scholarship when I was doing my undergrad. Because of that, one of the stipulations of the scholarship was that I had to sign a contract to work for the government. That contract's going to end in the middle of 2025, but I started working for them in May of 22. But I'm going to extend the contract once that time comes.
Right. So you're enjoying your work thus far, it sounds like then. Scale of 1 to 10, how would you define your current financial situation? 1 being horrific, 10 being amazing.
I mean, I would say it's pretty average, maybe like a 5 or a 6, just because if you look at like inflation, so one statistic that I learned a couple of months ago that was very interesting to me was that in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the average income for a single person, not a household, a person, was around $4,370, which translates today to about $88,000. So I would say it's pretty average.
And let's dive into current debts versus current assets. What current debts do you have right now?
Right now, well, obviously, the United States government just started redistributing, I guess, or they basically unpaused the student loan repayments. So I'm going to start paying that in October. Right now, I have around $13,550 in student loans. 4 loans average about 4.75% interest rate. And that's the only debt I have besides, your typical bills that are every month that I just put on my credit card and then I pay it off at the end of the month.
It's awesome. So you pay your credit card off in full every single month, never carry balance, never pay interest on it. No car payment, no mortgage, no personal loans.
No car payment. Right now I'm saving up for a house. So hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years, I want to get to break into the real estate world. I have a friend who's kind of like mentoring me on that. I'm gonna try and see if I can buy like a quadruplex. And right now in Texas, those go for around $500,000. I'm going to use a fake shade loan, and hopefully that'll be like $30,000 down. And then eventually that mortgage is going to be around $450,000.
That's a good goal to have, and going the house hacking route sounds like is what you want to go initially, and definitely can be something when done correctly and minimizes your living expenses and have someone else pay for it. So
yeah,
if you want to become a landlord, it sounds like you've kind of made that decision that that's something you want to do.
I do, yes.
And what other assets do we have right now? So you're saving up for a house. Do you have savings for that? Do you have any investment accounts?
So yes, I have a couple of investment accounts. I have a Roth IRA that right now has around $10,000. A couple of just investment accounts like Robinhood, and Coinbase that I started doing when I was like 16, 17. Those aren't doing too well. I had put in, I would say, probably a total of $6,000 between the last 6 or 7 years, and right now it's at around like $2,000. So loss of $4,000. And I have a savings account with or a high yield savings account that I have around, I think, $11,000 in there. And I think off the top of my head, that's all I can really. And I also have Acorns, an Acorns account that has around $4,000.
And do you have any retirement plans through your work, or?
Yeah, I forgot about that. So my work, what they do is they take, I think it's 10% of each paycheck, and they put it into their own retirement account.
And what type of plan is that?
So I'm not going to be honest. I have a seminar coming up to actually learn about that. I didn't know about that savings account until like literally a month or two ago. All I know is that the acronym for it is FERS, Federal Employee Retirement something system, something like that. But I don't really know what they do with the money. So
okay, it's good that you're taking part of the seminar to learn and figure out what is that invested in, what does this mean, what's being actually attributed to that. So they take 10% off the top of your paycheck no matter what, and you have no say-so in that?
I'm pretty sure if I wanted to, I could go in and change it to a smaller percentage. But like I said, I didn't know about it until like a month or two ago, and I don't know where it goes.
And you know how much is in that right now?
Around so $9,000 so far this year, and then last year I checked and it was like $5,000. So right now it would be about $14,000.
So that's always good when you find something that find some assets then that weren't accounting for previously.
Yeah, right. Honestly,
they're helping you out by taking that and you didn't even know it was there. So
right, exactly. Honestly, like I can't even complain.
So right now, between all those different investment accounts and your high yield savings account, my math's correct, is about $40,000 between savings, investments, retirement accounts.
That sounds about right.
Acorns, 4,000, Coinbase, Robinhood, about 2,000 total, Roth, 10,000, retirement, about 14,000, and then your high yield savings account, about 11,000.
The Coinbase, I think, is around 3,500.
3,500? Okay.
Yeah.
That Coinbase and Robinhood together, it's 3,500, or?
No, Coinbase separate 3,500, Robinhood separate 2,000.
Okay, Robinhood separate 2,000. Okay. Okay, so that brings it 44,500. So we have total assets and investments 44,500. And what's the value of your car right now?
So it's a 2015 Toyota Camry. I bought it at 23,000 miles, put a good amount of miles on it. It's around 132,000 miles. So I would say probably maybe like $9,000. It hasn't had any major mechanical work or any mechanical work besides your typical maintenance every year. So I'm not really a car guy. I would just assume it's 9,000.
Okay. And do you have any other assets apart from those investment accounts and the car and savings accounts?
Not that I can think of, no. I mean, we have my wife's car is also paid off, but that one's an older car. It's a 2008 Ford Escape, or 2010 Ford Escape. So I would say that one's probably around $4,000 maybe.
$20,000 worth of cars then, about. Okay, great. And I didn't know you were married, so we'll dive into that as well. Great. So we have between the two cars, retirement accounts, savings accounts, 64,000 in assets. Does your wife have any retirement accounts on top of that, or no?
So she's still in school.
Okay.
So no, she doesn't.
Okay. So 64,000 assets, and then debts. We're talking about the student loans, $13,000 in that. And that's your only debt right now. So brings your net worth $50,000, just over $50,000 at 24 years old. It's pretty good. How do you feel about that?
Made a lot of mistakes along the way. I was actually, when I was preparing for the show, I was calculating how many financial mistakes I made between 18 and 24. I calculated that it cost me probably around $13,000. So, yeah.
Hey, that's part of life, is learning. I've made way too much in financial mistakes myself for the last 10 years in business and personal life. And you live and you learn. You have to move on, and you have to just figure out what is your path moving forward. And again, why I started the show, because I want to help people learn about money and learn from my mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and not make the same mistakes. We don't all need to make big financial mistakes to learn from it. Hey, how do you learn from other people? Just as how you learn fitness from someone who's fit. So let's learn financial lessons from people who have made the same mistakes in their life. Why I started that. So 24 years old, $50,000 net worth. That's a pretty good spot to be in. I mean, majority of Americans that are 24 years old come out of school, have no savings, have $100,000 in student loan debt, credit card debt, car loans. So you're in a much better spot than the average American. So let's talk about college. What did you study in college?
So for my undergrad, I studied information technology and cybersecurity. And then for my grad school, I studied information technology.
And student loans, did you take out more than, you said you had a contract with the government for school. Did they pay the majority of it and you just had to take out that $13,000, or did you take out more on top of that for school?
So the first 2 years of my freshman and sophomore year, I was using Pell Grants. And those 2 years are when I took out the loans. The first year I took out a loan so I could buy a car because I didn't have a car. And that was my first financial mistake. Second year, I took out the loan because I wanted to graduate faster. So instead of taking 12 hours or even just 15 hours, I was taking the max I could take, which was 18 hours, which meant obviously I had to pay a little bit more. And I had to work a little bit less. So I just bit the bullet and took out the loans. Third and fourth year, junior and senior year, I was blessed and I was able to get a scholarship where they paid for my schooling. They paid me a stipend, so I didn't have to work. And I was able to just focus on school. And then same thing with my grad school. I just extended the scholarship.
Nice. That's going through college with scholarships is a great way to do it. So
yeah,
even if it is signing a contract for a couple of years, you're still making great money in your full-time job, and they're paying for all of your education and getting a stipend on top of that. So that's a pretty good spot and route to go in, and hope that opens up the eyes to people too, is, hey, you don't have to go through college and take out $150,000 in student loans. There's ways to go through it and get paid to go to school like you did. What are your future career goals?
Future career goals. So the reason that I chose cybersecurity, so I went to UTSA, and when I started attending UTSA in 2017, they had just came off of 2 years of being voted the best cybersecurity school in the nation. I actually went into college undeclared because I didn't know what I wanted to do. After being exposed, I decided, hey, cybersecurity is a career where I make a lot of money and not have to work myself to the death, working 80 hours a week or something like that, away from home. So that's why I chose cybersecurity.
What are your future career goals with cybersecurity?
Okay. So yeah. So once I found out about cybersecurity and how much you can make, I just decided, hey, maybe I want to work. I want to work for the government long term. But eventually I wouldn't mind taking a step back from government work and working maybe for the private sector, maybe as one of the head analysts at like a utilities company. That's kind of what I'm doing my trade out right now, working with energy groups and water companies. So that's kind of what my specialty is right now.
Awesome. And just for myself to learn and anyone watching, what is the typical, career trajectory in terms of income working in the cybersecurity world, both in private and public?
So public, I would say probably the typical average wage is probably around $130,000, $140,000. If you go private, the sky's the limit. But to put a more realistic number, it's probably around $200,000, over $200,000.
Nice. That's an awesome range to be in and be working toward. And what financial goals do you have related to your career?
So like I said earlier, I wanted to be involved in real estate. So I don't see myself working past 45 still within my career. Obviously, if I have to, I will. But hopefully, the next 20 years, I'll be able to set up the roots to be able to basically be my own boss and just, to be a landlord, have a couple of real estate properties, and then just be able to live off of that.
Goal to have is, how do you get yourself in that situation the next 20 years? That's with your income. That's definitely something that's feasible to start buying rental properties, commercial properties, whatever it might be, and set yourself up for success so you have cash flow in real estate when you want to. So you can live life on your own terms and not depend on a paycheck every single month.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your upbringing and financial education growing up. What was your childhood like? Where did you grow up?
So I was born in the U.S. in 1999. 2003, I moved to Morocco with my mom. Lived there for 11 years. Moved back in 2014. Started high school during my sophomore year in the United States. And as far as financial knowledge, I didn't really start learning about finances until I got a job when I was 16. When I was growing up, I didn't really think of money as anything serious. I didn't really understand that different people made different types of money. You know, I didn't understand that a doctor made more than, for instance, like I don't know, like a McDonald's cashier. For me, a job was just something that you had to do to keep yourself busy after you graduated school. So like I said, it wasn't until I turned 16, started working for McDonald's, and actually started earning a little bit of money myself that I realized, oh, this is how money works. This is how you budget. This is how you do this. Because within the first 6 months of working, I would say I probably overdrafted my account like maybe 5 times, which cost me like $30 each time I overdrafted.
So did your mother ever talk to you much about money growing up at all?
No, not really. My mom liked to keep finance talks at a minimum. And when I was 20, or after I turned 20, I remember asking my mom, I was like, hey, you know, how much do you make? She's a Spanish teacher. And where in Morocco, she was an English teacher. But she still kind of like hesitated to tell me, you know, she's the type of person who doesn't like throwing a number out there. She just answers with, oh, I make enough, and that's it.
And that's majority of America, because it is such a touchy and sensitive topic, and parents don't want their kids going to school telling them what's happening at home in terms of finances, because that gets around, or just people to know their underlying financial situation. Makes a lot of sense from just protecting kids from if there are uncomfortable truths happening at home, or they don't want information to get out. But at the same time, it can also set children back when they don't understand money. They've never talked about money. And since like for yours, for example, is you got your first job, got your first paycheck, and you started just swiping that debit card or credit card immediately when you're 16 years old, and that money goes away a lot quicker than it comes in.
Yeah.
And when you're not taught how to budget, or, hey, when you get a paycheck, you need to make sure you're setting aside some of that money for savings every single paycheck, you're going to find yourself in that cycle. And the issue with that is a lot of people find that route out quickly, but they don't change their habits. But it sounds like you've changed your habits since you're 16. You learned about money, started educating yourself about money, and have been able to save money over the last few years. So what type of financial lessons did you learn from your mom watching her growing up?
I don't want to be mean, but I wouldn't say I really learned anything financial from her. Everything financial I had to learn from my own mistakes, unfortunately.
Let's talk about financial mistakes then. You mentioned at the beginning of this, you kind of talked a lot about financial mistakes that have cost you over $10,000 over the last few years. What are some of those different mistakes that you've learned and kind of taken away from?
Okay, so the first major one, obviously, I actually wrote it down here so I could be able to talk about it just in case it came up. So the first one that I mentioned a little bit earlier was taking out that loan from school so I could buy myself a car because I needed a car. That mistake was not taking my time to actually do research into a car. Like I mentioned, I'm not really a car guy, so I don't really understand cars. I bought myself pretty beat up, trashy car for $3,000, and all I saw was, hey, it looks pretty nice on the outside, and it only cost $2,000. When I drove it off the lot, within like 2 days, the check engine light turned on. And when I went back to the dealer to ask him about it, he was like, oh, sorry, we don't sell it with a warranty. Over the next 6 months, I think it was actually over the next 9 months, I spent around $3,000 to $4,000 trying to fix the car up. And that was just money down the drain. One day I tried to use the car to go to work, and it wouldn't start. I tried fixing it myself because I was getting fed up with taking it to the mechanic. And it was just another waste of $300. So I ended up just contacting a scrapper, and he said he would buy it for $260. So yeah. So I sold a car that I spent $6,000 on in 1 year for $260. So that was painful.
Buying a used car, it can definitely need to, when you're doing that, find a mechanic that can do an inspection on it before you purchase it, figure out what warranties are involved in that, because it can definitely end you in a bad spot like you did. Yeah. That AC goes out the next day, or something in the transmission, or something happens, and costs you a lot of money to repair that. And you spent more on that car in 6 to 9 months than you even purchased it for, which is an unfortunate spot to be in. So what other mistakes have you made and learned from?
So the other mistake that I made that was pretty big. So I found myself, when I was 19, I had to move out. I found myself an apartment near my college campus. So it was student housing. It was a 2-bed, 2-bath. I rented one bedroom for $707 each month. And after like 4 or 5 months, I had like a falling out with a roommate. So I decided to move. I went and moved somewhere else. During the time where I was trying to find a new apartment to lease at, I was trying to sublease my old apartment. And some guy contacted me on Facebook because that's where I posted it. He was just like, hey, can I check it out? I let him check it out. within, I would say maybe 3 or 4 days, he came, he checks it out. He was like, hey, yeah, I really like this apartment. The only problem is I don't make enough money to be able to lease it myself. So I need a co-signer, but I don't have anybody in the city. And I was like really desperate at the time to just get rid of it. So I offered to co-sign it for him. Obviously, I didn't know this guy. But as an incentive, when I was writing your Facebook post, I offered $350, which was around 50% off for the first 3 months. So I gave the guy $1,000 to take the apartment off my hands. 4 months after I relinquished the apartment, I get a call from the apartment manager, and she tells me, hey, by the way, this bill is about to go to collections because the guy who subleased your apartment didn't pay the bill for the past 3 months. And I was like, what do you mean? I gave him the money. I gave him half the money up front. And when I contacted him, he was just like, oh, I don't see how it's any of your business. And then obviously they ended up evicting him. So I had to pay for the 3 months, or for the 4 months at the time, of backed up rent. So $2,800 plus an extra month for the next month that was going to come up, until I was finally able to find somebody who was able to sublease for me legitimately this time without me being a co-signer. So that probably cost me around $4,500. And yeah, that was another hard learned lesson. Don't trust people, and don't create or cave into your desperation.
Things are desperate. You make decisions like that are not the most logical. It can cost you. And it's a great lesson. Co-signing, even if it's a family member, even if it's a friend, especially a stranger, I wouldn't do. But even a family member and friend, it causes weird situations with family or friends. And then strangers, when they don't pay it or family doesn't pay it, you're on the hook for it. And you're either going to go collections, it's going to destroy your financial future, or you have to pay for it. And not only paid him $1,000 up front to take it off your hands, but then you had to end up paying those 4 months yourself, the full rent, because he decided to not pay any of it.
Very naive.
But the beautiful thing is you learned that lesson on yes, it's still $4,500, but you learned that on that versus someone trying to get you to co-sign a financed car for $30,000 or $40,000. You end up having to foot the bill on that or being liable for that. So lesson that hopefully you'll learn from, and never co-sign on a loan again. So
definitely, yeah.
That's what I at least tell myself. Every time I make a mistake, I'm like, yes, it's a mistake and it hurts now, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I won't make that same mistake, but 10 times bigger. Let's talk about your current monthly budget then. So you sent this budget over prior to the show, and is this including all of your expenses and your wife's expenses, or is this you have separate or combined finances?
So we have combined finances, but like I said, she's in school, so she's focusing on school. I wanted her to just focus on that. So she's not working at the moment. So basically, all those expenses I tried to include the expenses that are on her side. I don't really know. I don't really keep tabs on how much she spends a month. It's not that much. But yeah.
Oh, awesome. And how much longer is she in school for?
I would say probably until maybe she has 18 more classes to take. So probably maybe until the end of next year, 2024.
Okay. And what is she studying, if you don't mind me asking?
So she is currently in school getting her master's for information technology as well.
And so going through this budget, looks like gross income, you put about $90,000, your take-home pay, $5,600, $25. Is that after, I'm assuming your 10% is coming out that they're putting in your retirement account? Okay, so you're bringing home $5,600, your rent, $1,400, utilities, about $210. So your total home expenses is $1,600, which is pretty good for the income, about 20. Your rent's about 25% of your net take-home pay. Okay. No car payment, which is great. Car insurance, $163. Is that for both vehicles, both yours and your wife's vehicle? Cheap car insurance. I think it's the cheapest I've seen on the show. So that's great. Gas, about $260. You'll spend about $350 a month on groceries. So that brings your total necessities about just under $2,400. And then we have what I call fun money, which subscriptions, $45, eating out, $200, entertainment, $150, gifts and donations, about $300 a month, health and fitness, $200, personal care, about $200, shopping, $200, pet, $100, and travel, $160. So that brings total fund money, $1,555, brings your total expenses to $3,938, which puts you at, should be a savings of about just under $1,700 a month that you're saving every single month. Does that sound about right?
I would say the savings is probably a little bit closer to $1,300. I did forget to when I was going over the bill right before the show, I did forget to put in internet and which is about $150 a month for both.
Okay.
So yeah, probably around $1,300 more or less.
Okay. Saving some money, and you have your retirement account you're putting 10% of your, I'm assuming, gross income into. What is your, I guess, plan moving forward for saving for a house? Is every single one of these $1,300 going towards this high yield savings account to go and buy this investment property?
So no, I put in about $550 a month towards my Roth IRA, and then I put in I try and put in $500 to $600 a month for the house, and then the other $150 goes to Robinhood or whatever investment that I think is decent. You know, that those are like the long shots, you know?
The long shots.
Yeah, the long shots.
Long shots sound pretty, but then they hurt you in the long run.
Yeah.
I've learned the hard way. I definitely got caught up in the SPAC world of 2021. And when friends texted me, oh, buy this or that, I did not buy any GameStop. I refused to be involved in that. But some of the other SPAC stuff, I definitely learned my lesson and ended up cutting my losses when I was down 80% on some different things. And I promised myself after that, all my investments are going into ETFs because I'm not Warren Buffett. I've made some money in single stocks, but then I've also lost just as much money in single stocks. So I might as well just focus on not trying to be Warren Buffett. And in the long term, I'm not going to outperform the S&P 500. I'm not going to outperform just the total world stock market. I'm not going to outperform anything, and realize that I'm not going to sit here and study balance sheets. So I might as well just try to stay with the market, not try to beat the market. And same way, I had a bunch of stuff in Robinhood, and that's where I kind of traded single stocks, and it was not a pretty picture by any means. So
yeah,
it was pretty for a while, but then when tech valuations, everything started plummeting, it turned rapidly. So
that was the new bubble.
Yes, it was. Tech bubble was real with that. So okay, so you kind of split that across the board. What is majority of your Roth IRA invested in?
ETFs.
ETFs, okay. High yield savings account. It's good to be maxing out your Roth IRA, especially while you're young. $10,000 in there, that will grow beautifully over the next 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, with contributing the limit every single year. So do you know how much money you'll have roughly in that account by the time you're 60 years old?
60? So from what the calculations say, it would be around 1.4 million. But I mean, you know, that's the market works as it wants.
Definitely does. And there's future or past performance does not guarantee future returns, but yeah, you'd have over $1 million in your Roth IRA by the time you're 60, which would be a great spot to be in, and all tax-free dollars, and help you live the life that you want to live. And that's without including other investments going into other retirement accounts and going into real estate. So real estate, let's talk about that for a little bit. So what kind of inspired you or got you to start thinking about real estate? What have you been kind of doing to educate yourself and learn about real estate?
So when I started working at my current job, there was this guy who is one of my coworkers. He's basically my mentor right now. He owns a couple $1 million in his real estate portfolio. And I remember the very first thing that he mentioned about real estate to me was that when he was 27 or 28, he decided to dive into real estate about 10 years ago. And he spent $20,000 buying a abandoned property, and he bought it from the state. He spent $20,000 buying it up, $10,000 fixing it up, and he sold it for $80,000, and he made $50,000 within 1 year. And he probably said on average he probably spent like maybe 2 hours a week doing it. So 2 hours a week for like a year to make $50,000 profit. I mean, I think that's pretty good returns.
Not too shabby.
Yeah.
And I think real estate can obviously be a very lucrative investment asset to be involved with, but it also, as long as you prepare yourself, a lot of people, especially with home buying, a lot of people think of primary residences as investments. And I'm frankly on the other side of it. I did buy a house with my wife. Hey, this is going to cost money. We have a line item in our budget every single month that we're saving a couple $100 a month for when stuff breaks. And guess what? Stuff broke 9 months after we moved in. Our water line broke, and we had a $3,000 new water line a couple of days later. And then 12 months after we moved in, hey, guess what? Our property had a new tax assessment because the tax assessed value went up because we purchased the home last year. Another $3,000 bill. I think going the route that you're doing of buying a multifamily property that is truly an investment, when you can move out one day and rent out all 4 units or 3 units, however many you buy, 2 units, you buy a duplex, then that can actually turn into, as long as you're doing it smartly and you're cash flowing it. I think one of the worst things, I've also talked to people and they'll buy investment properties, but they don't cash flow from day one. And frankly, I don't know how that makes sense to do. If you're buying an investment property and you're paying someone to live there basically because it's not cash flowing. But so what's your timeline on that? You said the next 2 to 3 years, ideally, for buying a multifamily property.
So hopefully, yeah. Like I said, I was looking at the prices for multifamily properties in my area. San Antonio, it's probably around $120,000 per extra family or per extra household. So like, per unit. So if I wanted to go a 3 or a 4, I'm basically gonna have to plan for a $400,000 or a $500,000 property. 3.5 to 4% of that is probably around like $40,000. So right now, like I said, I have $11,000 saved up. When I gave you my budget, one of the line items on there was the gifts and donations, which was around, I think I had $300 set up for it. Some was basically like a dowry that I gave for my wife when we got married. I still got another $6,000 that I'm paying her every month. So probably within like a year and a half, I'll basically be putting the $300 towards the house savings. Additionally, at the end of the year, I'm supposed to get a raise at my work, which will be about an extra $10,000, which will be about $60 a month. So hopefully I'll be able to basically snowball that extra money into the savings account. And I anticipate, fingers crossed, if everything goes right, by the end of next year, 2024, my New Year's resolution, I guess, will be to start looking at houses. So hopefully next year I'll have $40,000 saved up and I'll finally be able to break.
Nice. That's exciting. And just continue to educate yourself and learn too along the way and learn more about properties, sit here and continue to build out a property ROI calculator. I've done that numerous times. I sit here and look at properties online and just figure out, okay, what is this return on this? What makes sense mathematically, financially? And even though you're not looking at the market today to buy stuff, just having that practice underwriting properties and figuring out what is your return will just help you a lot. As when you are actually seriously looking for houses, then you're gonna know then ins and outs, be able to back of the napkin calculate stuff, and then just understand kind of what your criteria is and what you're looking for, areas and everything like that. So and then find resources, podcasts. Obviously there's a lot of different real estate podcasts out there, Bigger Pockets, and a lot of other people out there that have good quality content to learn about real estate. So I personally don't own any real estate investment properties myself, but it's something I've learned a lot about, read a lot of books on, but I just haven't bought anything. And I definitely almost got caught up in the Airbnb craze back in, I think it was 2021. I was looking at a lot of stuff and I was looking online like, oh, South Florida, I want to go buy an Airbnb down there. But then I was like, okay, I'm going to be out of pocket $125 to buy something that's $600,000 that's 5 miles from the beach. And I talked to a lot of different real estate agents out there and did not even have one that I was talking to a couple, and I was like, so what's your target cash on cash return for this? And she's like, we don't look at any of that. It's up to you to decide. And I was like, I'm not asking you to like guarantee me something, but do you try to typically get a 5% cash on cash return or a 10% cash on cash return? And she's just like, we're not going to help you at all with that information. I'm like, versus in Atlanta, I have a real estate agent that's phenomenal. Helped me buy this house. And I've talked to him a lot about investment properties. And he sent me over like different spreadsheets, Excel documents that he had created for other clients of his and that are investors. And I was like, okay, this is the kind of guy I want to work with, not someone that's just going to not tell me, hey, they're not giving me any tools or resources or any of their past experiences. So
yeah, that Airbnb thing was crazy. Like actually the house that I'm living in right now, my wife and I are renting it from her mom's sister. They were actually renting it out for Airbnb and they were making good money from it for a while. But we started living here in August before we were living in an apartment. And throughout basically January through June, they were barely renting it out for maybe a couple of nights a month. So they were losing a lot of money. So we decided to like help them out and basically jump in and live here, pay the mortgage for them. And yeah.
It's Airbnbs can be great and they can cash flow a lot, but then they can also, when the market gets infiltrated with every house under the sun in good locations or Airbnbs, it saturates it quickly and
exactly.
People can lose a lot of money. So especially when you follow people on TikTok that say, hey, I made $100,000 in Airbnb, buy my course, and you can do it too. They're making more money from their course than they are from their Airbnbs.
Right, honestly.
Well, let's talk about your current spending, because you sent over a couple of your different cards with monthly expenses. Are these spreadsheets going to be in line with the average spending on your spreadsheet?
So average, yes. Per month, no, because I just so during the spreadsheet I gave you, I said that the travel was around $200 a month. Essentially, what I did was I took the travel that I spent on the cards for that month, because I just bought a couple of tickets for my wife and I to go to Morocco next year in May, and then we're gonna go to Tahoe in January. So I bought basically the 4 tickets within the last month. That's around, like, I think I spent like $1,500 because I had some points on my credit card that I was able to get a massive discount for the Morocco trip, for basically around $300 per person, when usually the typical price is around $1,500 to $2,000. Yes, on average it should be, but for the monthly, if you're just looking at the monthly, then no.
So I have a question before we kind of dive into these financial statements. Do you budget your money? Use any like tools or platforms to track how much you're spending every single month? I'm surprised by that, because you seem to know your numbers and seem to be pretty frankly well educated with finances and everything. But I'm surprised that you don't track your spending and see kind of where everything's going. And I would suggest that, because there's definitely times when I've been tracking my finances using a platform called min.com since I think it's 2016. I looked the other day. So like 17,000 transactions. My investments are in there, and credit cards, bank accounts, etc. And I've tracked so many thousands of different transactions over the last 7 years. And it just helps me see, okay, this is how much money I'm spending. And when we moved into our house, for example, I, for like 2 or 3 weeks, just went crazy on Amazon. I pulled up my Mint budget and I was like, this is sickening. I need to delete Amazon off my phone, because it just made me realize, yes, all these small Amazon transactions are $15, $20 seem small, but when you do that 15 times in a week, it adds up a lot. So I definitely suggest is like you created a good budget and have all that, but start tracking your spending so you can actually see, okay, maybe I did spend more than $200 eating out last month, or maybe, hey, our shopping budget says $200, but really we spent $300 last month. Let's kind of reel that in and just make sure you understand where it's going, because I think when you measure stuff, when you track stuff, you're a lot more likely to hit your goals. You're a lot more likely to hit your savings goals that you have right now for saving for a house, for investing in your Roth IRA, versus a lot of people kind of wander through life just living paycheck to paycheck, but they never look at their money and realize, hey, I spent this much money on DoorDash last month, or I spent this much money on Amazon. And those are things that they could cut out and not feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck. So one thing I definitely suggest.
When I was younger and making less money, I was very scrutinous about making sure that I knew where every single dollar went. But then I started opening up more credit cards so I could build my credit history and stuff like that. And just keeping track of it got kind of exhausting. So I kind of like took a step back, but I know I need to get back into it.
It can be, it doesn't have to be exhausting too. I mean, my wife and I, we typically look at it on Sundays, and it's usually takes us 15 minutes, and we'll do it right before bed, or we'll do it if we're sitting on the couch on a Sunday afternoon. And really most of the transactions are categorized correctly. And then I do have to go in and fidget around with some of them and just make sure that, hey, am I categorized something under a wrong category? It doesn't take me too much time, but you want to figure out how to automate it in a way so it doesn't take up too much time. It doesn't feel exhausting and feel like a chore, because it definitely, if you make it, if it becomes a chore, then you'll stop doing it, and then just won't be tracking your money. So definitely a suggestion I would have for you, especially as you're going to look at investment properties for years. You're gonna need to have a budget for that too. You're gonna have to run it like a business. You're gonna have to have a P&L and understand, okay, this is my rental income. This is my mortgage, this is my property taxes, my insurance, this is utilities. If you're responsible for any of that, you need to be building in maintenance reserves, capital expenditure reserves, vacancy reserves. And you're gonna definitely have to budget and track that, because you're gonna have to run it like a business. Otherwise, same thing with rental properties is, a lot of people will say, oh, my rental property cash flows, but they don't actually track every single expense, or they don't actually account for vacancy. Like your family that you're renting the house from, they had 6 months of rent that was not coming in because it wasn't written out on Airbnb, and that's vacancy that should have been in a line item that's been accumulating for the last couple of years. So just things to think about as you're going to look at rental properties and start doing that. You need to have your financial situation ordered on the personal side with budgeting, but also on the business side, you're gonna have to make sure that you're allocating funds and tracking funds there too. So going through these transactions, we have on one credit card, $2,275 in purchases last month, and you paid $1,000. So your remaining balance is due, it looks like at the end of this month. And I'm assuming, it sounds like you're paying that off every single month in full. So you're paying that or $1,200 off by this period, correct?
Yes. So the period ends October 8th, and I have basically in 2 weeks.
Good. Okay. So yeah, I mean, see, this year there's been no interest charged on this card. And then on the other card, we have $472 in purchases. So between the two, just about $2,600. And I do see the airline tickets on one of the cards about $1,000 for that. So if you remove that, like you said, you're doing that for next year. If you amortize that technically over the next 12 months, those purchases, you're about that $1,500, $1,700 in transactions, which your budget, once included phone and internet, you're about $1,700-$1,800 in expenses. So about in track with that. So I'm not going to dive into every single transaction. We see, I'll just read a couple of them that we see. I mean, going to Walmart, going to Starbucks, going to Target, PetSmart. What is Frontier Waste Solutions? You pay $100 for that?
That's trash services. $30 per month, but for some reason they charge it for 3 months in advance. So
okay, and you're responsible for that, not the owner of the property?
Well, since they're my basically their family, you know, it doesn't really matter to me.
It's nice of you. But then, yeah, Amazon transactions, McDonald's, but I'm not too worried about your spending habits. It looks like looking at this. Obviously, we have $1,000 for the flights for next year, but as long as that's not a monthly reoccurring thing, I'm not too worried about it. As long as you're not buying $1,000 flights every single month. And then on the other card, there's only $472 in transactions. And from that, it seems gas is on here, a lot of gas.
Yeah, that's my Costco card. So I buy my gas from Costco because I get a discount. And then at the end of the year, I get basically 4% back from however much I spent. So I basically get a 4% discount plus whatever discount Costco gives me. So
and you're paying this card off in full too. So there's no interest charge on here. And that's one thing too that a lot of people run into in America is they will go and take out a credit card during that 3% or 4% cash back from Costco. Then they find themselves paying 28% interest rate on a $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 balance because they don't pay off it in full every single month. And no amount of rewards can ever outpace credit card interest because you're getting charged 20, 30% on your balances. If you're carrying a balance, rewards, you earn between 1% and 4% typically. And that's, if you're earning 1% to 4% on a 28% interest rate on the credit card companies are always winning. So there's a reason their P&Ls are, and it's not because they're giving out rewards. Awesome. Well, no, I think right now, I mean, looking at your financial documents, spending is in line pretty good for two people, two in your household. You're spending just about $4,000 a month and you're bringing in $5,600. That doesn't include, this income also doesn't include your soccer, your coaching from your soccer. It doesn't include your new acting and modeling stuff that you're doing. So that's always just going to be cherry on the top if you continue to keep your expenses in this spot. That's going to allow you to save more money every single month, which is good. So I think you're well on your way to building wealth, getting this rental property, and then snowballing into that. So what's your experience when it comes to investing?
So like I said, I started investing when I was like 16, 17. My experience, my one, I guess, helpful point that I would say, don't buy when people are talking about buying something. You know, if they're talking about buying it, it's already too late. And that's one of the lessons that I learned from Robinhood. Like I said, I invested around $6,000 in two specific stocks. One of them was called Tattooed Chef, and I forgot what the other one was called. Tattooed Chef, I bought it when it was at around like $6 a share, about like $2,000 worth of that. Plummeted in the past 2 years to under, I think, like 10 cents per share. And they actually
half cents right now.
Yeah. Like it's basically dissolved. It's not even, you can't even trade it anymore. So
the market cap is $3 million. It was in 2021, it was $25 a share. And yeah, now it's 3.5 cents. So it's down 99.63% max, but yeah.
And then I had a couple of other stocks. I forgot what those were. That were basically the same story. I bought them when everybody was talking about them and they were like on the up. They had just had like 6 months where they were consistently going up. 2 quarters they were in the green, and then as soon as I bought it, everybody was buying it, and I guess I don't know what happened, fell off. Basically, if you're gonna buy a stock, understand the market that you're getting into, because I didn't understand the market. I just went off of maybe 2 hours watching YouTube videos and was just like, sounds like a good idea.
I'm right there with you. That's what I was saying earlier with 2021 in the SPAC world. Is I was the same way. I went against everything I'd been doing prior to that. Before that, I was all ETFs. I was all just like long-term investments with that. I was not sitting here trying to day trade or pick single stocks, putting in total market index funds and using it. I use Acorns personally too, Betterment. They're just auto investing, just was just full throttle on those. And then I decided, hey, I think I'm smart. Let's see. People are talking about Lemonade or Metromile or these other stocks that are SPACing and going public. And I was like, I think if they can make money, I can do it too. And tens of thousands of dollars later, I learned my lesson and I sold them at a loss and was like, not going to do that again. And if someone comes to me and says, hey, you should buy this, I'm going to say, great. If you want to do that, you're welcome to, but my risk is not there. And I don't care if who tells me to do that. Maybe if Warren Buffett tells me to buy a stock, maybe I'd listen. But besides that, if you don't have net worth over $100 billion or $50 billion, and probably not going to listen to you because one, I don't have the cash that you have. And two, I don't have the risk tolerance. So when it was, I guess, 2021, everyone was laughing because Warren Buffett was like, I'm not buying these stocks. I'm not buying these SPACs. And he was holding on to cash and he wasn't changing his thesis. And you had people on Reddit, you had people like just out here saying I'm making money in the tech world. And Warren Buffett's like, I'm not straying into that world. I'm not buying any of that. And here he does come out of 2022, 2023 in a much better position than 99.99% of people that were telling Warren Buffett that he was an idiot back in 2021. So that's what he also says that majority of people are better off investing in index funds and in broad market ETFs and forgetting about it because, again, if majority of investors that are working on Wall Street can't beat the S&P 500, what's the likelihood that me sitting at home that doesn't study the markets, balance sheets, income statements for a living for these companies, and also does not have any control over the market, how am I going to beat the stock market average? So awesome. What is one thing you wish you knew earlier about personal finance?
I've done a lot of learning. I guess one thing that I wish that I did earlier is my first job, like I mentioned, was I started working when I was 16 at McDonald's for $8 an hour. And I stayed with them for 4 years. And by the end of those 4 years, I was barely making $8.50 an hour. And for some reason during that whole time, I didn't really, say to myself, hey, I should try and find ways to make more money. So basically just don't get comfortable. I would say, that's the only thing I can really say.
Makes sense. There's one thing we did not touch on, I just realized, and student loans. We did not touch on that. And that was something we kind of talked about in terms of debts at the beginning of the show. But student loans, you have $13,000 balance, 4.75% interest rate on those, you said, kind of on average across all of them. What's stopping you from paying those down earlier than not? Or is your goal to pay just the minimum payments from now on when they resume in a week or two? Or is your goal to pay those down quicker?
So the loans that I took out were were government loans. So 3 of them were subsidized and 1 of them was unsubsidized. And each one was around, I would say, $4,000, or 3 of them were $4,000. 1 of them was like $1,500. And during the last 2 years when COVID was happening, they weren't really accruing any interest. So I didn't really see a point on paying them off, which I probably, in hindsight, maybe I should have, but I thought, hey, the S&P on average returns around 7 to 8%, over the course of a lifetime. So I was just like, well, I mean, if I'm investing $500 a month into the S&P 500 through my Roth IRA, that's potentially 7% or 8% return that I could make versus the 4% that I would save on if I paid off my loans. So I just did the difference. Maybe it was bad math, but I was just like, well, in that case, in the long run, where my capital is very limited, I'd rather put money into investments, pay myself first, rather than pay back the loans while they're being while they're on forbearance. So I didn't really see a point in paying off the loans when I could pay myself first. Essentially, was my logic.
A lot of people have that logic, especially when they're in forbearance. So they're not accruing any interest. But on the flip side too, paying yourself first can also land in situations like your Robinhood or Coinbase that might be down $4,000 or $5,000, and that would have wiped away half of the loan balance with those. So definitely, I mean, a lot of people have a risk. If they have a risk tolerance of, hey, they have interest rate that's 2 to 4% or 2 to 5%, and they want to invest that in ETFs, and they have the risk tolerance to do that, then a lot of people do choose that route. It does obviously come with risk because the stock market can go down and some years up, other years. But then a lot of people, I think biggest issue of last year, a lot of people, instead of paying off student loans, they went and financed new cars, they went and bought houses, and do not have any room in their budget when student loans are resuming inevitably here in a few weeks. In your position with 4.75% interest rates, some people would tell you invest the difference. Some people would tell you pay them off. The investing difference only works if you do invest the difference. A lot of people say, I'm going to keep my 4.5% interest rate loan, but I'm going to live paycheck to paycheck, not invest any money. And that's also not a smart route to go. And then other people will say, hey, you can earn 5.5% in a high yield savings account, but high yield savings accounts are taxed as normal income dollars. So if your normal tax bracket, federal and state, I guess you're in Texas, so you don't have state income. But if you're paying 20 or 22% in terms of federal taxes, then you're not actually making 5.5%. You're making around 4.5%, some in that ballpark after accounting for taxes. So if I was you, I'd figure out what is your plan moving forward with that. I'm more risk averse and more, I would sleep better at night not having debt when it comes to student loans. And with your income, with your savings rate, like what is you could figure out a plan. Hey, what if I throw an extra $200 on that? How quickly does that speed that up? Yes. Does that limit $2,000 a year or $3,000 a year towards saving for your investment property? It does. But does that make you sleep better at night? Does that make your wife sleep better at night? Figure out what that plan is for you. Me personally, I'd be figuring out a plan to pay that off quicker than not, even if it is at a 4.75% interest rate. Because I personally wouldn't want $150 a month going towards the government, and I could be using that for investing, or I could be using that for, hey, let's put that towards our travel budget. So that was one thing we did not account for in the monthly budget, since it's resuming here in October. But something for you to just keep in mind and think about is figure out what is your plan for that. Again, what is your risk tolerance for that? What is your desire? Do you want to have these student loans just be finished paying them off 10 years from now? I wouldn't want you to be in that situation, especially with your income, with your goals and ambitions. Yes, could you go and theoretically return 10% S&P 500 or in real estate? Could that happen in the next 10 years or next 20 years? Yes, but there's also risk that comes with it as well. And it's figuring out, it's not guaranteed returns. Just figuring out kind of what is your path for that. But me personally, I'd figure out what to do in that situation.
I do have $300 allocated to go to that a month. Well, actually $288, which is exactly double the amount that's the minimum payment for the loan.
Okay.
If I did the minimum payment, it would be 10.5 years. If I do double the payment, it's 3.5 years. So just slightly above 3.5 years. So I've got that covered.
Good. Okay, good. We touched on that. We hadn't touched on that, so I'm glad you're figuring that out. And then also you can figure out, okay, what if I get a pay raise and whenever that is, and I throw an extra $100, an extra $200 at that, what does that look like? And then that way you're just knocking that out a lot quicker too. But I'm glad you're at least looking at that and figure out, okay, I can knock this down to 3.5 years. Me personally, I'd be like, how can I knock this down in the next 12 months? When I get a pay raise, all the soccer money, all the acting money, go that towards paying off the student loan debt. You can be out of that in under 12 months and still not affect your housing fund, not affect your investments in your Roth IRA. If you go that route and just make sure every single dollar from soccer, every single dollar from modeling, acting goes towards paying this off. But that way, 12 months from now, you don't owe anyone any money, and you can just continue on your way and start throwing more money towards investments, or start throwing money towards, hey, me and my wife want to start putting $150 towards traveling and go explore different places, and kind of figure out what you want to do with that. So something to keep in mind and think about.
Good. Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, really just appreciate your time today and transparency, talking about your financial situation. And you put yourself at a 5 or a 6, honestly, in regards to your income, in regards to your spending, in regards to your investment, being 24 years old. I'd put you at a probably 8.5, 9 for your age. I mean, you walk down the street in America and ask how many 24-year-olds have a net worth of over $50,000. Majority of them do not. They have car loans, they have student loans, they have credit card debt. So you are well on your way to doing that. The only reason I didn't put you at a 9 or a 10 is because I don't like student loans. I don't like debt. You do have a low student loan interest rate compared to some people who have 10 or 12%. But I would like for that to be paid off in the next 12 months versus the next 3 years. But overall, I mean, you should give yourself a lot more credit than putting yourself at a 5 or 6, because you're well on your way to set yourself up for success and being able to do whatever you want in life. So,
can I actually just mention one more thing?
Yeah, please.
My third and my final biggest financial mistake was I have I have 3 cats, right? So I started off with having 1 cat, and last summer in July, or maybe it was two summers ago, but by now, my cat got sick. He was the cat that basically I spent my entire time COVID with, so I was just locked up with him by myself. So it was very special for me. I didn't want to lose. So I paid $1,500 to get him all patched up and everything. And Obviously, at the time, I was still in school. $1,500 was still quite a bit of money. So I didn't know about pet insurance. And I would just recommend, hey, if y'all have pets who are prone to getting themselves into a lot of trouble, a dog who likes eating trash a little bit too much, a cat who's a little bit too curious for his own good, look at pet insurance for sure. It's like $20 a month versus a $1,500 pet bill. And my deductible every year is $250. So that'll give you a lot of peace of mind.
Couldn't agree more. That I have a dog too, and fortunate that I have pet insurance. My dog's going through cancer treatment and stuff right now. And pet insurance is covering a majority of that, which I'm thankful for. And he's 9. That has saved us a lot of money because treatments, anything when it comes to animals, it's a lot more expensive than people think. So, pet insurance it's called insurance for a reason. It's there. It's great when you have it. And if you don't ever have to use pet insurance, you pay money towards it, then that's still a great position to be in, because you have that peace of mind that $5,000 bill comes in, then you don't have to sit here and worry about that if the pet insurance company is paying for it. So
exactly, yes.
Definitely agree with that. So awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your lessons. Thank you for sharing just your entire story and learnings about finances and mistakes. And I hope everyone watching this can take away some learnings. Don't co-sign loans, get pet insurance, and especially don't co-sign loans for people that you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't co-sign for family, but especially do not co-sign for strangers. It can never end well with that situation. But really appreciate your transparency coming on here and being open, and you're well on your way to building a amazing financial future. You're already doing that at 24 years old. You have a great income. So my only suggestions for you is start budgeting your money. Make sure you're tracking every single dollar using something like Mint, Copilot, Every Dollar, one of those platforms that you can track your spending with. So you understand where everything's going. Student loans, I would like for you to work a plan to pay those off in the next 12 months using your income from acting, from modeling, from soccer, and just wipe that off the table so you never have to think about it or worry about it again. And that won't affect saving in your Roth IRA. That won't affect saving in your housing fund. And just keep on learning, keep on growing about real estate, running the numbers on that. And make sure when you buy a property that you run the numbers with worst case situation and not always just best case scenarios, because something will break in that house, and just make sure you're running that correctly. So just keep educating yourself. But really proud to see the success you've had so far, and know that when you're 45 years old, you're going to have multiple rental properties, and you're going to be making probably $200,000+ a year in today's dollars, being in cybersecurity. So really just appreciate your time and transparency today.
Thank you for having me. It was great. It was a lot of fun.